Hello and welcome back to the Shutter Sports Refresh. I'm your host Finn Noel, giving you all the biggest sports news from the week of December 2nd to December 8th. Let's start off in the NFL, where there's only 4 more weeks until playoff time. It's getting exciting. There are a few teams that have already clinched a playoff spot, like the 10-3 Buffalo Bills and the always great Kansas City Chiefs. With a win next week, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Houston Texans are able to clinch a playoff spot, and the Baltimore Ravens, Los Angeles Chargers, and Denver Broncos are all sitting at 8-5 in pole position for the 3 wildcard spots. Right behind them and on their tail is the 6-7 Miami Dolphins and Indianapolis Colts, and they'll look to spoil the part of the Chargers, Broncos, and Ravens. But unfortunately for the Dolphins and Colts, they'll have to go 4-0 in their last 4 games to have a shot. Now that was all in the AFC. Let's move over to the NFC and see what's going on there. The already clinched teams are the Detroit Lions and Philadelphia Eagles, but it's the NFC South and West where the division battles are far from over. In the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just stole first in the division from the Atlanta Falcons with a strong win over the Raiders. Now the Falcons are 1 game behind, but have won the season series tiebreaker, so the Buccaneers cannot afford a misstep. After their win over the St. Louis Cardinals, the Seattle Seahawks and the LA Rams are the only teams with a shot in the NFC West, with both teams facing off in Week 18. The winner will most likely head to the playoffs. As we move into the playoff season, the NFL is getting more exciting by the day, so make sure to come back next week and we'll fill you in on what happened. Let's move over to some college football now, where it was Conference Championship Week. These games are a big deal as the winners get playoff spots. The teams that have already clinched playoff spots include Oregon, Notre Dame, Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Indiana. Boise State, who's led by the Heisman candidate Ashton Jeanty, clinched their spot in a 21-7 win over UNLV. In that game, Jeanty had 209 yards. He's now just 131 yards away from Barry Sanders' all-time record for most rushing yards in an NCAA season. Georgia needed a win to stay in the playoff picture at the SEC championship game, but they had their work cut out for them in the form of number 2 seed Texas. The game ended up going into overtime, tied at 16. In overtime, it was Trevor Etienne for Georgia who ended up scoring the touchdown after they were down 3. This was Georgia's second SEC championship in 3 years. Congratulations. Moving over to the Big 12 championship now, where the final game was between Arizona State and Iowa State. Arizona State got a big lead in the second quarter and never gave it back, taking the 10th of 12 playoff spots. One of those 2 spots would go to Clemson in a clutch win of the ACC championship. Clemson picked up that win against SMU with a clutch 56-yard field goal for the win. Luckily for SMU, even after that loss, the committee still chose them to take that 12th playoff spot, and the final 12 are now set in stone for the playoffs. The first round of the playoffs is set to start on the 20th and 21st of December, so make sure to come back and we'll let you know what happened. Let's move over to basketball, where play for the regular season has stopped to hold for the NBA Cup, or the in-season tournament. The quarterfinals are set, and the first matchup will be the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Dallas Mavericks. These 2 teams matched up in the playoffs last year, so it should be a good game. The other game in the West is 2 overperforming teams, the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. Moving over to the East now, it's the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Orlando Magic. And the other game will be the Knicks and Hawks, who have a bit of a rivalry after a couple playoff matchups. These games will be played on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we'll head over to Las Vegas for the NBA Cup's finals. Sticking on the topic of basketball, the WNBA Toronto expansion has finally announced its name and branding. The Toronto Tempo will start their play in 2026, just 1 year after the other new team, the Golden State Valkyries, start playing. The WNBA is getting bigger and bigger every year, and I can't wait to see it continue to grow. It's officially the free agency period in MLB baseball, and there's been some big news. Juan Soto, who was just in the World Series with the New York Yankees, has now signed to the New York Mets. His deal is a monster 15 years and $765 million. Ridiculous. We'll make sure to keep you updated with any big free agency news in the baseball world in the next coming weeks. Let's move over to F1, where the last Grand Prix of the year went down yesterday, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Although the driver standings were set in stone with Max Verstappen taking the win, the constructor standings were still up for grabs between McLaren and Ferrari. McLaren was in the lead, and what Ferrari needed to take the win was 2 podium spots and a rough race for McLaren driver Lando Norris. Well, Ferrari did get 2 drivers on the podium, with Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc finishing 2nd and 3rd, but Lando Norris ended up coming in clutch, taking home first and winning the constructor standings for McLaren. Congratulations to McLaren for the constructor championship and to Max Verstappen for the individual driver championship. Let's get into some UFC news as UFC 310 went down on Saturday. The main event was Alexander Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. Asakura was defending his flyweight belt for the 3rd time, but the victory ended up going to Pantoja with a 2nd round rear naked choke victory. Congratulations to the new flyweight champion, Alexander Pantoja. And finally, let's end it with some soccer check-ins. Liverpool sits atop the Premier League by 4 whole points. The top of Serie A is very contested, but Atalanta is currently number 1. In La Liga, Barcelona is in first place over both of the Madrid squads. In Bundesliga, of course, it's Bayern Munich, and in Ligue 1, it's still PSG. In the Champions League, the undefeated Liverpool has already clinched automatic advancement into the round of 16 through 5 games. No team has been eliminated yet, but PSG is still struggling with only 4 points, and as things stand, they could be eliminated from the competition. And that will do it for this week's episode of the Shutter Sports Refresh. I've been your host, Finn Noel, and I hope you learned something today and had a good time while watching. You can check me out on social media right down here, and same with Shutter Sports Media, they'll be here as well. And don't forget about the writer for this episode, Lucky Roberts, he'll be right here. Thanks so much for watching.